Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight with Sandalina, and I'm your talk show host, Sandalina Sitar. Today's very, very special guest is Mussab Ali, who is the Pakistani Muslim mayoral candidate for Jersey City, also known as the Black Zohran Mamdani. He's running up against Jim McGreevey, New Jersey's formerly disgraced governor, who resigned amid sexual harassment allegations and corruption charges. Mussab, on the other hand, has an impressive and clean background, as he was formerly the president of the Jersey City Board of Education, making headlines as the youngest elected official in Jersey City history, as well as, at the time, the youngest Muslim elected official in the entire United States. Since then, he's gotten his JD from Harvard Law and survived cancer. Mussab, it is such an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sandalina.
Before we begin, I actually want to play this recent clip of Mussab at the mayoral debate. I think this says everything that you're going to need to know about the difference between him and Jim McGreevey.
He talks about people who play by the rules. But frankly, he's also being supported by the exact same people who break all the rules. Charles Kushner went to jail for illegal campaign contributions to Jim McGreevey. He was pardoned by Donald Trump. He is now an ambassador to France. Guess who one of Jim McGreevey's biggest donors is? Charles Kushner. Again, there's a set of rules that exists for a kind of people who are supported by special interests, and they're the kind of rules that you and I don't get to play by. That's why he's running a campaign talking about second chances. What about people like us that have never gotten our first chance? I think it's important that we turn the page on old leadership and bring in somebody new with fresh ideas.
So this episode, we're pivoting from entertainment to politics, which means that we're going to have a different set of 4 segments for this episode, starting with 1, who is Mussab Ali, 2, Mussab Ali's platform, 3, the main segment and my favorite, grilling Mussab Ali, and segment 4, key election information. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
So we're going to go ahead and start off with the first segment for today's episode, which is who is Mussab Ali? Well, Mussab, for starters, you're a politician. And that alone means we don't inherently trust you. As we know, politicians are self-serving, maniacally egotistical, and narcissistic. Who are you, and why should anybody trust you?
Politicians have a pretty bad reputation. I think rightfully so. I think especially in America, very self-serving. You look at members of Congress and the ways that they trade stock and the ways that they get rich off public funds. And, you know, for me, I didn't get into politics as like something that I wanted to do as a kid. I actually remember when I went to law school, I met somebody my first year of law school, my first day, who said, I'm either going to be POTUS or SCOTUS. And that really scared me, right? Like, wow, this is someone whose ambition is either to be president of the United States or Supreme Court justice. I actually started off wanting to be a doctor. My parents were like, look, you should be a doctor. I was like, cool. Like, I want to be a neurosurgeon, and I thought I'd be a brain doctor, and, you know, sort of got involved in politics and kind of by mistake, right? Like, when I was 19, I ran for office on the school board, and that trajectory has led me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And you also talk about this on your website, across your socials. But tell me about your story of your parents coming to America and you coming to America.
Yeah, so it's crazy because Ellis Island is, you know, where a lot of immigrants basically came to Jersey City.
Yes.
And they came to this country. So Ellis Island is a part of Jersey City, and a lot of people don't give us enough credit. But my parents, they immigrated here in 2000. And my father, his first job was actually working at Newark Airport. So September 11th, he has a job. And then September 12th, he lost his job because he had the most common name in the world, Muhammad. And then, you know, my mom, I remember literally like would take the bus to school. She's a teacher. For 3 years, no one sat next to her.
Wow.
And so 9/11 was like really deeply impactful for my family. And then, you know, you fast forward to 2016 and Trump talks about thousands of Muslims celebrating on the rooftops of Jersey City during 9/11, which is complete BS.
We've talked about this in season 2. Yep. Very, very bad.
Yeah. And so I decided to run for office. And I lost my first election in 2016. But in 2017, I get elected. And, you know, the rest is sort of history.
And while you were a member of the Board of Education, you helped bring clean drinking water to the schools of Jersey City. So which means before that, for the longest time, there was lead in the water. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I was in 3rd grade, they literally found lead in the drinking water in Jersey City public schools. And my entire time growing up, I mean, I literally remember, like, you would go to high school and you would go to gym class. And after gym class, like, sometimes there were these water coolers and sometimes they'd run out. And if they'd run out, there was just no water. And so you literally just had to deal with the fact that there was no water in your school. So to me, it was like, you know, you just accept it as your reality. And it wasn't until I got elected to office where I realized, like, wait, there's a body that exists whose job is to fix this problem, and they have not done it for years. And that made me realize, like, we elect all the wrong people to public office sometimes, right? People who have no idea the struggles of everyday working people.
For me, that was personally mind-boggling. I couldn't fathom that in the 21st century, in a first world country, we don't have basic human rights offered to children in the place in the vicinity that they spend most of their days, right?
Yeah.
So that's really a shame, but I'm really happy to know that there are people like you that will fight for good in the world. And while you were the president of the Board of Education, you fought for a $17 minimum wage, you increased teacher salaries to $61,000 a year, and you abolished student lunch debt. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay, very impressive. And on a little bit of a personal note, from my understanding, you're also a cancer survivor, and you were going through chemotherapy treatments while you were on the Board of Education.
You know, there's not really history of cancer in my family. But what happened was I was elected to office, right, in 2017. I was reelected in 2018. By 2021, I was the president of the Board of Education. And this is the middle of the pandemic. So, you know, I'm at Harvard Law School at the time, but law school's remote, so I'm staying home. And I remember I had this cough, and I thought to myself, like, I probably just have COVID. And obviously, there was a lot of sort of stressors that I was dealing with, right? I'm figuring out law school. I'm like trying to figure out how do we reopen our schools. And then what happened is I go to the doctor with this cough, and he's like, bro, there's masses in your chest. And then he comes back and he's like, you have advanced stage cancer. And so, like, very quickly, I think things sort of escalated. And I think it was, you know, sort of this moment in time where I got to really think about who I was and what I wanted out of my life. I said, you know what? I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. And I said to myself, look, if I get a second chance, I want to continue to do public service.
Yeah, that's a really powerful story, and I'm really happy that you were able to come on the other side and be where you are today. You've mentioned a couple times, you know, Harvard Law. Tell us a little bit about your education journey. From my understanding, you're in the public K through 12 system, then you go to undergrad and law school. So give us a brief career overview.
Yeah, so this is like the Wikipedia like education section. So I go to pre-K to 12 in public schools in Jersey City. So basically all over the city as well, right? Like I didn't just stay in one neighborhood. I was in the Heights at one point. I was in Journal Square. I was in Greenville, and then I was in downtown for high school. And then I went to Rutgers Newark for college. So I got a full scholarship to go to Rutgers Newark. Went off to do a double major in biology and economics. While I was there, I got this scholarship actually to go off to Beijing. And so I spent a couple months in China to do my master's. COVID happens, the world shuts down. I'm back. I apply to law school, get into Harvard, and then wrap that up in 2023.
Yeah. Wow. Very impressive background. And as somebody that came from a very career-oriented upbringing in Cupertino and going to Berkeley and stuff, I really appreciate somebody that has those accolades. It's really respectable. You have this line, and I want to ask if you can say it for everybody in the audience.
I often say, I'm Mussab Ali. I'm not just running for mayor of Jersey City. I'm fighting for the soul of the city. We're fighting for the idea that every child should be able to achieve their version of the American dream. And I think that's really important, right? Because the American dream looks different to all of us. And I think that we need to encourage people to pursue whatever it is that they want.
I love that. Absolutely beautiful. A world where people actually have access to resources to grow. Who would have thought? Tell us a little bit about some of your bigger endorsements.
So we've been very lucky. We've gotten some pretty large national endorsements. Attorney General Keith Ellison endorsed our public safety plan. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar endorsed us and actually came for a rally here.
Wow.
We had Congressman Ro Khanna who endorsed us. I just saw him last week. Literally, he was here in New Jersey. And look, we've also got endorsements from some big like political organizations. So Run for Something has endorsed us. 314 Action has endorsed us. New American Leaders has endorsed us. MGH has endorsed us. So we've had a lot of national support, and I think it's been pretty cool to sort of see the trajectory of people being really interested in a local election.
With all of this in mind, now we know a little bit about who you are on a human level and what brought you to where you are today. In one sentence, why should we trust you as a politician?
I think because I'm a normal person. I think so often you meet politicians who sort of like have manicured their resumes or manicured their backgrounds to be a certain kind of person, and I'm just a normal guy.
I love that answer so much. All right, we're going to move on to the next segment of today's episode, which is Mussab Ali's platform. So Mussab, I know you recently unveiled this Cradle to Career initiative, right? So tell us a little bit about what that is and what that specifically entails across different facets.
So Oakland, California actually was the model for this. In Oakland, the mayor of Oakland and their mayor's office created a fund that talked about the idea that, you know, there's so many people in Oakland that didn't get the opportunities that they wanted. And so you hear actually even Senator Cory Booker talk about this, right? Like baby bonds that exist to allow young people, as soon as they're born, to have like a 529 or an education plan that gives them the opportunity to go to college. So what we want to do in our initiative is we want to basically, from as soon as kids are born, kids that meet a certain income level, provide them with a sort of fund that will continue to grow so that when they go off to college, they'll have opportunity to go off to college, right? They know that that's something that's accessible for them. There's money that's been set aside for them. Then throughout their time in school, we want to provide mentorship, sort of wraparound services to students who are in school system, and then provide them with the opportunity to go off to a great college and then to get a great job. Look, the reason I got to where I got to is because I had so many support services around me, right? Both from my parents and my family, but then also different nonprofits that I was, able to be a part of that gave me the skills necessary to get to where I am today. And so I think it's important for me to give that back and provide a real initiative for every kid in Jersey City to have that opportunity.
I love that. A plan for the people. I'm going to give you a category of your platform and describe it in one sentence what you're proposing, okay?
Sure.
All right. Affordable housing.
We want to change zoning and build a land bank, basically hold developers accountable.
Okay. Transit.
We want to build a fast and free city-run bus system.
Defense against Trump.
We want to make sure that people in Jersey City are insulated against the madness happening in D.C.
On a side note, I really like the way this is phrased because it sounds like defense against the dark arts and like Harry Potter. Education.
Education, again, we want to provide initiatives for every kid in Jersey City to achieve their version of the American dream.
Economic development.
We want to make sure that small businesses that are the backbone of our society have the support needed to grow and thrive in Jersey City.
Public safety.
We want to make sure that public safety actually feels like you're being safe, and that means we build trust and accountability with our police system.
Ending corruption.
We will not take any money from city vendors and city contractors.
And last one, arts and culture.
Want to make sure that the artists that have created the culture in Jersey City have an opportunity to live there, and so we want to make that city affordable for them.
And you guys can't see this, but he's actually answering these instantly. It's very impressive. It's like, go, go, go. We're going to go ahead and move on to the main segment for today's episode, which is grilling Mussab Ali. So we're going to have a mix of serious and unserious questions, so just bear with us. All right, Mussab, perhaps the most important question of every mayoral race apparently in 2025. As mayor of Jersey City, where would your first foreign visit be?
So I've made a video answering this question, saying it's not going to be Israel. And actually, at the end of that video, I actually had some of my posters that were vandalized to make me look like Hitler. I don't think that's convincing me to go to Israel even more. But look, I think people sort of over-index on this idea that we have to create a really strong bond with one particular country in the Middle East. And to me, I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, I completely agree. As mayor of Jersey City, would you arrest Netanyahu?
Yeah, look, I think that our city should be in accordance with the ICC, right? The International Criminal Court has declared an arrest warrant for war crimes against Netanyahu, and I think that he should be arrested for that.
Absolutely, and he was just here prancing around New York City freely at the UNGA, which was just an absurd sight. As a Muslim mayor of Jersey City, wouldn't you just funnel city funds to your terrorist brothers in Hamas?
Look, we are focused on the people of Jersey City and making it affordable here. Honestly, a lot of our policies are talking about, making sure that we get the aid necessary for people in Jersey City. And look, I can tell why a lot of Americans are frustrated about this, right? We send a lot of foreign aid, and yet we have people here in Jersey City that are living in poverty, right? People who don't have access to healthcare. And so I can understand so many Americans who are frustrated with any level of foreign aid. Not to say that we shouldn't be a part of it, because I think that the U.S. does play a role in sort of stabilizing the world. But I do think that people here are rightful to have frustration about the fact that they feel like their resources aren't being met.
So Zohran actually had this quote on Zateo News very recently, where he may have been quoting somebody else actually that he heard. But the premise of it was that while there are people in America that don't have access to education or healthcare, our dollars are actively going towards bombing Gaza's healthcare and education, right? You see that there's a situational irony and a very sad reality of what's going on. So thank you for shining light on that. As the Muslim mayor of Jersey City, are you implementing Sharia law?
It's funny. I've gotten this question now for 9 years in a row. When I was running and when I was 19, I remember people asking me, are you going to have Sharia law in Jersey City? Are you going to force my daughter to wear hijab? I don't know where the book on Sharia law is. I'd love for someone to find what that book looks like. I actually studied Islamic jurisprudence while I was in law school as well. And I can tell you, that's not something that exists. There's no book on Sharia law. And no, we will not be enforcing, whatever sort of fantastical idea that some radicals have on the internet.
So to be clear, when you are elected mayor of Jersey City, people can still eat pork and drink alcohol?
Yes.
Wow. Dicey answer there, Muslim mayor. On 9/11, as a Muslim Jersey City resident, were you dancing and celebrating on rooftops?
I was 4 years old and I was not celebrating. But the thing that frustrates me about this question is that this actually was a real question that was asked to Adil Manji, who's an attorney from Jersey City who was going to be a circuit court judge. He's going to be the first Muslim circuit court judge in U.S. history. And they literally asked him if he was celebrating on 9/11.
Unironically, just to be clear?
Yeah, seriously.
Oh.
Like the Senate committee asked him, on C-SPAN, were you celebrating on 9/11? I mean, this is the extent to where that question has gone.
That's insane. And final note to close off this section of questioning on Islamophobia and Zionism, do you have a message for Jewish Jersey City residents who don't want you in office?
Recently, have actually been getting a lot of positive responses from Jewish residents in Jersey City. I was at the synagogue for Yom Kippur just last week, and I've also had a lot of Jewish residents who have said to me, look, I understand what you're trying to do. Because I say to them, look, to me, this is not a city for Palestinians. It's not a city for Jewish people. It's a city for everybody. I want to make sure that everybody's safe. And even the people who really dislike me or dislike some of my views, I still want you to be able to thrive in Jersey City. I want to make it a city that's affordable for you as well.
Wow. I really like that concept of not alienating people based on their views and actually allowing for free speech and belief and just wanting humanity and kindness and resources for all. So thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next section of questioning. This is going to be about Zohran. So a lot of people call you the Black Zohran Mamdani, and obviously you guys are compared to each other for obvious reasons. Personally, I just want to take a second and say, as a supporter of both of you, I find the comparisons to be both flattering and just a little bit reductive, and let me explain why. I think it's flattering because you both are morally grounded individuals who intrinsically care about the working class. But I also find it a little bit reductive because I feel that you've also been working passionately for years behind the scenes. And I personally find that people are inadvertently downplaying that by attributing your success to Zohran's success. And I'm sure you look up to him and admire him, as we all do. But in my mind, it's not as if your dedication to this line of work is a reaction to his popularity, but instead something that was happening in parallel while you and Zohran were both building up your political careers. And of course, there's a synergistic media impact that we're not blind to, but there's a beauty in that, right? It's not that you're riding a wave. This is who Mussab Ali is and has been for years. So that was just my 2 cents. But I wanted to ask you, how do you feel being compared to Zohran?
Yeah, I mean, listen, is it the Black Zohran Mamdani or is he the beige Mussab Ali? Look, I've been elected to office back in 2017. I think Zohran was elected maybe 2021. So I've been in the elected office world for many years. And to me, I think it's really exciting to see someone who's also like me doing the kind of work that he's doing. I think he's had incredible success, and I'm so happy for the work that he's done. And I think that, the thing about Jersey is we are just a little bit different, right? I mean, the idea, even in New Jersey, sometimes people call Jersey City like the 6th borough of New York City. And we hate that because I think Jersey has its own personality, right? Like we have our own thing that's sort of going on. But I think actually what makes this comparison even funnier is the fact that we are both running against former disgraced governors. Like that to me is the funniest part about this whole thing. It's like some sort of weird skit where people are like, hey, let's put these like progressive young immigrants against former disgraced governors and see how that goes. Yeah,
it's been really entertaining a news cycle, I will say, these days. Have you worked before with Zohran?
So we haven't worked together on any policy projects, but I do remember, back when actually he was doing that, the hunger strike in DC, like he had reached out and said, hey, like this is a thing that we're doing. Unfortunately, couldn't make it then, but look, he's been someone who's been grounded on the right side for a long time.
Yeah, 100% agree. And you guys were photographed at an event together recently. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I've met him a couple times. This one it wasn't a photo necessarily that I was taking, but somebody else had taken a photo of the two of us sort of like hanging out together and sort of chatting about our races. I mean, look, he's very familiar with what's happening in Jersey City. He quotes Jersey City policy sometimes. We've done a great job on housing and building more housing, and I hope that New York City does the same thing.
Love that. Compare and contrast yourself to Zohran for the audience. Similarities and differences.
Similarities. We're both Muslim. We're both immigrants. We're both progressive. We're both morally grounded. We both speak truth to power. I think differences like education-wise, I probably over-indexed on education. Done a lot more on sort of the education side. The other thing is, look, he's, his family's originally from India. My family's originally from Pakistan. But we also love each other, like there's no rivalry there. I also just think like the way that we grew up is very different, right? I think that, he talks about his education journey, sort of going to private schools and then deciding to go to Bronx Science. And for me, like public school was always the option. Like that was the only thing my parents were ever going to be able to afford. And so like that was the journey that I sort of had growing up. And, I think it like really changed the way that I thought about what does it mean to have access to opportunity.
So fast and free bus critics have expressed that part of your policy feels like a page stolen out of Zohran's book. So I just want to understand, how is your proposal for transit similar and different from Zohran's?
Yeah. I think it's similar in the idea that we both understand buses are some of the most effective means of public transportation, right? Like a fixed route transit system is always going to be better than an Uber system or sort of like a carpooling system. What's different is Zohran is talking about making the MTA free. What we're talking about is building a fast and free bus system that is city run and city operated within Jersey City.
Okay.
So just within Jersey City, you can go around. And also where the funding comes from, I think Zohran's money is going to come from the state house and sort of new taxes implemented. For us, Jersey City actually already supplements a transportation system called VIA to the tune of $7.8 million a year.
Wow.
So what we're saying is, why don't we reduce that subsidy and have $6.5 million spent towards the city-run bus system as opposed to this private company?
A great job on the Zohran section. We're going to move on to the competitor section. So Stephen Fulop, the current mayor of Jersey City, has already ran for governor. So that leaves Jim McGreevey, Bill O'Day, James Solomon, and you. Tell me a little bit about each of these candidates.
So Fulop has already lost the race for governor, and now there's basically four main contenders. There's some other people who are running as well, but I don't think any of them are polling above single digits. So James Solomon is the councilman from downtown Jersey City. He moved in about 10 years ago. Jim McGreevey also moved in about 10 years ago, was the former disgraced governor of New Jersey. Was actually formerly before that was the mayor of Woodbridge. So he's actually been the mayor of another town. And you would think like you've been the mayor of a town, like that's your identity, but no, this guy's moved into our town, now wants to be our mayor. And then Commissioner O'Day has been in office for 40 years. He's actually someone that I think of as like a mentor almost. But I also just think that, it's time for a new generation of leadership.
Unlike the New York City mayoral election, this is a nonpartisan election, meaning that ballots will not list party labels, and there were no party primaries preceding the generals. So just to get a sense for the audience, what political party ideologies would you say the four of you are each influenced by?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that myself, O'Day, and Solomon would call ourselves progressives. So we actually have like three people who are like ostensibly progressive in the race. And I think McGreevey is definitely a moderate. Like, I don't think he identifies as a progressive. I think even on like, you ask him stuff about ICE, which has seemed to be like a cry for all Democrats. Like he doesn't speak on ICE, right? Despite the fact this is a city that's 41% foreign born. Like he won't talk about that issue. But I think all of us are sort of, in line with the idea of like, okay, we want to be progressive, but like, what does that mean, right? And so I think for me, like, building more housing, sort of like a growth trajectory for the city, I think that, some of the other candidates may not be as pro-housing. And I also think on the moral issues, right? Like Solomon actually recently just came out and called what's happening in Palestine a genocide. Oh. But he's the same person that when we had a ceasefire resolution about a year ago, like voted it down. And so to me, it's like, I'm glad to see that like now he's come on the right side of history. But it's also like, to me, it's like, okay, are you going to have someone who's running for mayor who's like willing to buck the trends and fight when it's hard? Or is it someone who like, all right, now it's comfortable to say something and is now okay with that?
Very important distinction to make. So, you haven't referred to yourself as a democratic socialist or anything along the lines. And for the audience, democratic socialism basically refers to a belief where economy and society should be run democratically to meet public needs rather than generate profit for a few. Would you refer to yourself as a democratic socialist, a Democrat?
The thing is, I don't really love the idea of having a generalized label. So I do like the idea of like being a social democrat. I think this is something that like Abdul Sayed calls himself in Michigan. De Blasio calls himself a social democrat. And I think part of the reason that that label I think fits better is it allows me more flexibility on what my platform is. Part of what I think has been tough sometimes with DSA is like sort of this all or nothing approach, right? So DSA sort of has a national platform where they say like, here, this is what we believe in. And I think even Zohran has sort of run into some sort of headway with this where, the national DSA has talked about defund the police and Zohran has sort of distanced himself and said, listen, the policies I believe in are the policies that are on my website. But to me, look, I believe in the idea that there should be a wealth tax. I believe in like, Medicare for all. I believe in the idea that the system is like, not helping everyday working class people. I just think that the label sometimes makes it tough because the question then becomes like, are you all or nothing? And I think that, for every city and every municipality, there are going to be different answers and different questions.
I do understand the concept of sort of getting boxed in with the label and wanting to avoid that, but taking the values and extracting that and putting that into your platform. So beautiful answer. Next question. It's not why you, but why not the other three?
Look, I think it's really important to have someone who is from this generation, who is closer to the median person who lives in Jersey City. Like the median person in Jersey City is 34 years old. I am the closest in age as opposed to any of my competitors to that person. 41% of the city is foreign born. I'm the only person who's running who's an immigrant. This city is 76% minority, right? I think that it's just so important for people to have someone that represents them, that looks like them, because I think it allows people to see government differently when they feel represented, when they can see someone who they can say, hey, this person went to public schools just like I did. This person grew up in my neighborhood. This person has been all around the city. And so like I can resonate with who that person is. And I think that we do the best job of connecting both the new residents and the people who have been there for the longest time.
What would be your one reason for residents to not vote for each of the three?
Look, I think let's start with McGreevey. McGreevey is the former disgraced governor of New Jersey. He talks about this like this is his retirement plan. Commissioner O'Day, look, like I said, love and respect him. I just think it's time for a new generation of leadership. He's been in office for 40 years, has done a lot of incredible things, but I think what you need for mayor is someone with some new, fresh, and bold ideas. Councilman Solomon, again, he's a nice guy. I think represents a very particular part of the city, which is the wealthiest part of the city. And unfortunately, the city feels like a tale of two cities, right? The downtown portion and everybody else. And I think that everybody else needs a representative that says, look, I'm making sure that I'm going to have everybody included in the process, not just one part of the city.
And that's a great wrap on that section of questioning. Next section for questioning, we're going to do some platform-specific Q&A. So, some urban housing critics argue that ambitious rent control or anti-slumlord measures can discourage new development, reduce incentives for maintenance, or lead to legal challenges. What is your response to this, given your lower the rent take on slumlord policies?
Look, I think the problem is right now we've let some slumlords really get away with almost murder, right? I'll give you an example. In Jersey City, we had a story where literally a landlord put a dead fish in one of the apartments to like drive in maggots to move out other people who lived in that building. I'm like, that is the extent to what we've allowed to happen. And like, had it not been for press coverage and people coming in and talking about this process, I mean, that landlord would have basically gone away with it. And actually what they did is they just handed over to a different LLC. And so now they're not actually held liable, and you're trying to find the agent who's responsible, and you can't even find that person. And so to me, like, the question is not, oh, how are we, preventing new development? The question right now is, how are we protecting the people who are in their homes, who are under assault by some of these slumlords that are saying, hey, I'm going to kick you out of this rent control unit so I can jack up the prices. Look, I've been to housing court. When I was in law school, I literally defended people in housing court, and I can tell you that people need protections. People don't know the laws that exist, and there are so many units that are basically uninhabitable.
Rezoning every R1 area to R2 is a sweeping change, one that some homeowners might view as threatening to neighborhood character or property values. How do you reconcile that with your goal of empowering homeowners, and what would you say to residents who feel this policy benefits developers more than the communities it's meant to serve?
Yeah, so just to break down R1 to R2 zoning and what that means for a lot of people. So basically, it would take single-family homes and allow people on single-family lots to build up to 4 stories, right? So build up to 4 units. And the way that we talk about this is actually empowering a lot of people in their communities to decide what is best for them. To me, look, I hear stories all the time from people who have been here for a long time, right? Like senior residents who said, look, like I've been in Jersey for 70, 75 years, and I've owned this home. And this is, I don't get an income from this home. I'm on fixed income. And I want to be able to live in this city, but I can't afford the mortgage. I can't afford the taxes. And so what we say to them is, look, this is an opportunity for you to have 3 new streams of income, for you to be able to stay in the city, to be able to have this new income that comes in. You can hire a management company that sort of manages the whole thing, so you don't have to feel like, as a landlord, you have to do all this upkeep. But it gives opportunity to a lot of residents, and it gives opportunity for new people to move into Jersey City. The other thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that 33% of the new housing that's built is going to be affordable housing. And what that does is you don't just have affordable housing now in just one neighborhood, you have it spread out throughout the entirety of the city. And so again, what we're doing here is, again, it's a big idea. It calls for massive change, but there's a reason we're running on it and keeping it center in our platform so that when we win, we can say, hey, we have a mandate to do this, right? Versus a lot of politicians will say, hey, look, I want to build more affordable housing. They're not going to tell you how they want to do it. And then when they get in office, they sort of capitulate to these interests. As people say, oh, like neighborhood character, or like, I don't want that in my neighborhood. We're making it very clear. In every neighborhood in Jersey City, we want to change zoning to allow people to build more housing And the give back is going to be affordable housing for the city.
We love affordable housing, and it's nice to hear somebody advocating for that with real substance behind the policy as opposed to just making a blanket statement to get votes. Next question, offering free public transit is a bold promise, but transit systems often run large deficits, especially with maintenance, operations, and capital costs. How would you fund fast free buses sustainably over time, and how do you ensure service quality doesn't suffer under such a model?
Yeah, there is one part of this proposal that I think is going to be something we have to watch from the federal administration, which is traditionally when municipalities are buying buses, so the capital cost, 80% of that is usually put up by the federal government. And the question now becomes, under the Trump administration, like what will happen to those subsidies that exist? Part of what we've been looking at is we've been talking to NJ Transit about potentially reusing some of their old buses. So that can be something that we can put into our system. But right now, this is sort of an open question of like, where do you get the money for the capital cost? Part of what the city could also do is bond for it upfront and put that into the operational cost as we think about this, over the long period of time. But again, there is a current subsidy that exists for transportation in Jersey City, and it's going towards a private company. And what we want to do is take that money and bring it in-house, right? I mean, to the point that you're making, right? Like public transportation loses money. And so if it's going to lose money and you have a private company that's running it, and that company has to turn a profit to their shareholders, where do you think they're getting that profit from? They're going to continue to jack up the prices on taxpayers to make sure they can meet that profit margin instead of making sure that this is an efficient and well-run system. And so to me, like, let's make a system that the mayor is accountable for, because people are always screaming about public transportation in Jersey City, and we want to give them a real option that the city can control.
In many cities, campaign contributions, vendor relationships, and pay to play is more symbolic than structural. What concrete steps would distinguish your approach from past reforms that fell short?
Look, pay to play is a huge problem in New Jersey, okay? It was such a huge problem that we had a bill around pay to play to say, look, like if you're a vendor, you can't give money. And then we got rid of that law. Like that's literally who New Jersey is, right? And so we want to basically say, look, we don't want to be the laughing stock of the country. We don't want to be known for corruption. And so we want to make it very clear, right, to vendors, like, look, like we are going to open up the books, make sure people know what's happening in these contracts, publish transparently what's happening, who's bidding, who are people who are donors, and also make sure that that culture does not exist anymore, right? That vendors know, hey, it's not about who's paying to make sure they get their contract, but actually who is the person who's going to do the job the best.
Last question. So Jersey City just approved their budget last month of $750 million. In layman's terms, explain where, if you had full control, how you think that money should be split up and where it should go.
So look, right now, I think that there's an immense amount of money that's being spent on police overtime. And I think that if you're paying for so much overtime for police officers, you should probably just hire additional officers instead of paying so much overtime. I think, again, the money that they're spending towards VIA and this transportation subsidy needs to be reduced. And I think we need to make additional investments in making a traffic safety division. Right now in Jersey City, there is no traffic safety division, which means you can drive like a madman and there's almost no consequences.
Wow.
Unless there's a county sheriff in place, like you can basically drive and run red lights and like no one is going to stop you. And so I think that you need to make sure that there's somebody who's actually enforcing the law that exists. But then separately from that, right, when it comes to recreation has been something that's seen its budget being cut over the years, when in reality, we should be investing more and more to give young people opportunities. And there are private vendors that want to come in and donate money towards recreation, but the city just hasn't, has sort of gotten in the way of itself and not allowed these new people to come in and help us.
We're going to get to our last set of questions within this section of the episode. And this one is addressing criticism. People online say that you are young and relatively inexperienced. What do you have to say to that?
I was called too young when I was 19. I was called too young when I was 20 and when I was elected. I was called too young when I was 23 and I was the board president. And now I'm too young and I'm 28. And at some point I got asked the question, it was like, when am I not going to be too young? But the reality is, look, I have managed a system where we had a $814 million budget. We had about 6,000 employees. And a lot of the people that we were advocating for were people who couldn't even speak up and tell us what was wrong, right? And so on the school system, the reason I was elected as the president was because my peers understood that I was the most capable person on the board and the person who could get the job done. And if I could do that when I was 23, 5 years later, after going to law school, after the other experiences that I've had, I think I'm more than capable of doing this job. My main competitor has experiences of resigning in disgrace, of literally misappropriating money and being fired from their job. And when they were the governor of New Jersey, they literally took, helicopter trips on taxpayer dime. Like, this is the kind of experience that we're talking about relative to the experience that we're trying to fight for.
There are accusations of you running on a resume and history of personal resilience as opposed to having a deeper understanding of municipal governance. What's your response to that?
I think that campaigns are about ideas, right? Particularly when you're running to be the mayor. The job of the mayor is to be the visionary for the city, to say, look, where's the direction that I want the city to head in? And I would put my ideas against any of my opponent's ideas and ask people, like, what is the vision that you want for the city? Because I think we have some pretty big ideas. You know, maybe they're not for everybody, but I think they have a very clear vision of where we want Jersey City to be, right? To be a model of inclusive urbanism. And there's some people who don't want that, and there's some people that do want that. So I don't think this is about the resume. I don't think this is about, sort of stat padding here. I think it's more about, look, what is our vision for the future and what is the vision for everybody else?
On the resumes piece, one more comment somebody made online was that there's an Ivy League arrogance about you. Do you want to address that one?
I think this is, honestly, it's kind of funny to me because, again, I went to public schools growing up. My parents are both union workers, right? My mom's a teacher. My dad's a postal worker. I grew up in a very middle-class household. I went to Rutgers, Newark for college. And, for those people that know the Rutgers system, Rutgers, New Brunswick is the flagship school and sort of is considered more prestigious. And Rutgers, Newark is not as prestigious. And then going off to Harvard Law School, like, to me, Harvard was sort of surreal place. And I don't consider my identity to be, oh, I'm someone who went to Harvard Law School. I consider my identity to be someone who is from Jersey City. And like, that is the most important thing. If you were to ask my classmates at Harvard about me, the number one thing they would tell you is that this guy only talks about Jersey City. Like, that was what I was known for. And so to me, like, yeah, it's great that I was able to go to the school, and I think it's an amazing opportunity. But at the same time, like, that's not what defines who I am. What defines who I am is the work that I've done.
Whether we like it or not, we live in an elitist society, right? So these sort of accolades are actually really important credentials for people to take somebody like Mussab seriously, a person of color that they may have judgments about education level as an immigrant, right? Or somebody that's so young, right? People are like, oh, who is this kid, whatever. That line, unfortunately, is something that you do have to market along with your name. But to his point, that's not his only selling point. His selling point is that he loves Jersey City and humanity, right? But some people are saying that you're making empty promises, claiming that you don't actually have the power to fulfill any of what you're saying you will.
Look, I think that people don't understand, like, what is the role of the mayor, and they don't understand sort of like, how do you work with other government agencies? And I want to make sure I address this in terms of, like, previous experience. When I was on the Board of Education, in order to reopen the schools, I literally had to call the governor's attorney, who, by the way, was a Harvard Law School alumni. That's how I had access to him. And I got him to change the executive order to allow teachers to get vaccinated. Wow. Then had to work with the mayor's office to coordinate vaccines, had to work with the teachers union to get them all vaccinated, and then to reopen the schools. So, these are the kind of things that I've already had experience doing. And I know that these are promises that we can actually do, right? And so for us, when it comes to the buses, when it comes to the zoning, these are all things under the mayor's jurisdiction. And I think part of the experience of having gone to law school is understanding what's allowed in the law and what's not allowed.
People are questioning the financial viability of free buses.
Right now, VIA, right, the system that exists, costs people $2. But what it actually costs the taxpayer is an additional $13. So every time someone gets on VIA, it costs $15 per passenger. Fixed route transit is like less than a fourth of that cost. And so it is more effective and more efficient for us to have a bus system that exists than to have this sort of VIA system. And I think a lot of people in Jersey City, sort of question the integrity of this process because they don't even know what VIA is. Like, that is how inefficient that system has been, that people have no idea that there's this massive transportation subsidy that we are putting up for a system that the majority of people in Jersey City have never used. And so to me, again, it's like, you will see that bus, you'll understand what it is, you'll see it sort of moving around town, and that will be a much easier way for people to get around the city versus something that I think a lot of people don't even have access to and don't understand.
Yeah, and that's a really great way to close up the section. I just want to, say one thing. It's really difficult to respond to criticism and challenges of your beliefs and your identity. And you handle that really well. So I want to commend you. You talked about this a couple days ago on your Reddit, AMA, Instagram Live about the difference between internet personalities and politicians and how they respond and handle hate.
I've been in politics long enough to understand that, like, part of what it means to be a politician is to absorb a lot of hate, right? Like, people are going to criticize you, but if these are your neighbors, like, you have to learn how to live with them. A lot of people who exist on the internet can just block anybody who they're like, all right, this is someone I don't agree with. This is somebody who's like hating on my page. All right, we're going to block them. But to me, like, I actually make a proactive effort to try to reach out to haters, especially if they live in my town, right? Like, if you're my neighbor and you're not happy with me, like, I need to know why, right? Can we come to common ground? And I say that because, again, there are people who really disagree with me on the Israel issue. And I will call them and I will say, listen, it is okay for you to yell at me about this issue and for me to disagree with you, because I want you to understand that I am still trying to represent you. At the end of the day, the job of a politician is not to be liked by everybody. In most careers, right? If you were at 51% or 49% of people hated you, like, you are doing a horrible job. You are a terrible doctor. You're a terrible attorney. But in politics, if you have 51% of people who approve of you, you're going to get reelected. And so it's a very different kind of career that exists. But again, I think that part of our job is to understand, look, we are signing up. And, the law actually even protects this, right? Going back to like the legal implications. The criticism that you can make of a regular person versus the criticism you can have of a public official, the law allows you to criticize a public official more because they understand that that is part of what they sign up for.
Yeah, it's your responsibility to listen to your constituents with a humble ear, right? Not with any sort of self-serving attitude about furthering your agendas. So it's really refreshing to actually see that in a politician. We're going to move on to our very last segment for this episode, which is the key election information. So, all right, Mussab, what's the deadline to register?
October 14th. So if you have not registered to vote by October 14th, can't vote for me this election.
Where can people register?
So they can go online. We have a website page called canivotejc.com that makes it pretty fast for you to check if you're registered. But there's an online registration portal that the state of New Jersey runs where you can check if you're registered to vote.
When does early voting start?
October 25th. So we actually have a whole week of early voting. So you can vote between October 25th all the way until that Sunday, I believe. And then that Monday before Election Day, you can't vote. And then you can vote on Election Day.
And what's the actual election date?
November 4th. It's going to be a really big day, both in New York City, hopefully, and in Jersey City.
Yep. Where can people vote? How do they find their poll sites?
Yeah, so you can also go online to find that. On the same state website where you can say where you registered to vote, you can also find your polling location. A lot of people actually should be getting ballots in the mail, sample ballots, that also have their polling location on it.
And what will people see on their ballot? In New York City, there's ranked choice voting. How does it work in Jersey City?
So in Jersey City, you get to vote for one mayor, but then you also get to vote for the whole city council. So we're running on a full team. So you can vote for the whole Team Ali slate. So you can vote for me for mayor. You can vote for my 3 at-large candidates that are citywide, and then you can vote for my ward candidate. And that sort of allows us to have the legislative sort of room to implement our agenda, right? That there's not just one person fighting for it. There's a whole set of people who are fighting for what we believe in.
And then I know that the runoff election, if it gets to that point, is December 2nd. So tell us a little bit about what is a runoff election. How would that look?
Yeah, so the way it works in Jersey City is if nobody gets 50%, which is very likely in this election, if no one gets 50% in November, the top 2 advance to a runoff election on December 2nd. The way that I see this election going, the runoff will probably be ourselves and McGreevey. And in that situation, I mean, we're going to get another month of a former disgraced governor and a young progressive immigrant running for office. And so I think that, while the Zohran comparisons sort of exist right now, I can sort of imagine what they're going to be for that next month. But look, I'm excited about the opportunity of representing the people of Jersey City and having a one-on-one matchup where people are saying, look, it's not 7 options. There's 2 people. And then you really have an opportunity to say, look, there is a mandate to implement what we're fighting for.
And Mussab, how can people get involved with your campaign? Are you taking donations, volunteers? What's the best way to help out?
Yeah, look, if people want to volunteer, if you don't live in Jersey City, if you're not in the area, you can go to ali2025.com/donate. But for people that are willing to volunteer or want a phone bank, go to ali2025.com/cal, and you can see all the different events that we have going on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was incredibly informative and helpful. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. That's all for this week. Tune back in next week for the next full-length episode on Sundays. And in the meantime, I'm your talk show host, Sandalina Sitar, signing off.